Hello everyone, welcome to valuetrainings.com. So till now we have seen why Selenium is used and which are languages it supports and why do we use C# language, right? So we just started with the basics of C# and then now let us see some more advanced topics like what are loops, arrays and functions. And as we proceed, we'll also discuss why we need to study these topics while studying Selenium and where all in Selenium will we be using these topics, right? So let's go to Visual Studio. I'll create a new project. Say we have loops, arrays and functions. Alright, and inside this loops, arrays and functions project, say suppose I have a class with me known as concatenation operator class, which contains the main method inside it. Right, now say suppose inside this main function I declare two variables, that is I have a string x variable is equal to say Selenium it is, and another variable y is equal to training. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to type Selenium training in one single line. Right, so how will you do? You will simply say console.writeLine x plus y. So plus is the concatenation operator over here, which will concatenate the two strings, that is the value of x Selenium with the value of y training. Right, so say suppose I'll just write console.readkey, and when I execute my code, you see that it concatenates the two strings, that is the value of x with the value of y Selenium training in one single line. Right, so now like this example we have seen in the previous class as well. Now say suppose I have two integer variables with me, that is int a is equal to say 10 it is, and int b is equal to 20. Right, and then now if I write console.writeLine a plus b, and if I try to print the result, then what you will get, you will simply get the sum of the two numbers 10 and 20, that is equal to 30. Right, but say suppose if I write console.writeLine a plus b plus x plus y, and another statement that is console.writeLine x plus y plus a plus b. If I try to print the result of these two lines, right, and then if I run it, we see the execution of the last two lines in a slightly different manner. Right, just look at the output of the last two lines. The first line, what it will do is it will simply add the two numbers, that is 10 and 20, which is equal to 30. Right, and then it will concatenate the result of a plus b with the value of x, that is Selenium, and then concatenate it with the value of y, that is training. Right, but in the next line the execution starts from the left hand side, that is x and y are concatenated Selenium training, then it is concatenated with the value of a, that is 10, then concatenated with the value of b, that is 20. Right, so there is a difference in the result of the last two lines. Had I been written like this, say suppose I had been written console.writeLine x plus y plus a plus b in the brackets, and then now if I execute my code again, you see that it prints Selenium training and then adds the two numbers 10 and 20, then concatenate it with the value of the previous result. Right, so you might get errors in your code as well while working with the Selenium, and you might get confused as well. So you have to be very careful while using the concatenation operator. This plus is the concatenation operator. It never adds up directly, especially with the strings it is. Right? Alright, so now let us move forward to the next topic, that is what are loops. Right? So I'll just add a new class into my project, that is add class, and I'll add a class known as the while loop. Okay, and inside it I'll just add a main function. Okay, and I will just comment the main function of the concatenation operator class, since a single console application project cannot contain more than one main function inside it. So we'll just have to comment one main function, right? So we are in the while loop class now, and inside this I have a main function in which we will be writing our code. So like in the while loop, first of all what we do is we initialize the variable, that is I have, say suppose int I is equal to 0, right? So this is the initialization of your variable. The first step is the initialization of the variable, and after that we will be writing the while loop like this, that is while I is less than 10. While I is less than 10, print the value of I, okay, and then increment the value of I to I plus 1. Alright, that is I am incrementing the value of I to I plus 1. So now what this condition tells you, this is the condition over here. It says that till the time I is less than 10, keep on going inside this while loop, keep on running the while loop, and then keep on printing the value of I, and then increment the value of I by 1. Right, so when you run your code, say suppose I'll just run it, I'll write console.read key, and if I execute my code, you see that it prints the numbers from 0 to 9. Alright, so while loop is something which will keep on running every time till the time the condition is satisfied. So I less than 10, while I less than 10, this is the condition part. This is your condition, and I is equal to I plus 1, this is your incrementation or the decrementation part. Alright, okay, so while loop will keep on executing itself, and then we can, like you can see the execution of the while loop by debugging the program as well. Debugging means running your code line by line as per the way you want it to run, or as per the way you want it to control your code. Right, debugging is very strong. Say suppose how do you debug your code? You just inside, like out here in this gray bar, just go to your mouse, keep your mouse over here, and then just click over it. You get the red dot over here. Right, so debugging is very strong, it's very powerful concept. You need to learn it, because while writing your big Selenium scripts, you can get an error. So to resolve those errors, you'll need to debug your program. Alright, so let us see the execution of the program. Alright, that is out here I have put a breakpoint over here, and then when you want to debug your code, you simply I simply execute my code, and then you see that the cursor is now on your breakpoint. Okay, so how do you run your breakpoints? That is, you just hit F10 from the keyboard. Okay, so now the control comes on the next line, I is equal to 0, and then we have while I is less than 10, that is 0 is less than 10, the condition is true, so it will come inside this while loop, and then it will print the value of I, that is I is 0, and then next it says that increment the value of I by 1, so 0 plus 1 is 1. Right, so you see that it has now changed the value of I to 1. Alright, I'll just I'll just press F10 again, and then now it will again check the condition I1 less than 10, true. It will go inside this while loop, print the value of I, that is 1, and then again it will increment the value of I by 1, that is 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, right? So now the value of I has been changed to 2. Right, so this loop will keep on running till the time the condition is satisfied, I less than 10. Till the time this condition is satisfied, it will keep on running this while loop. Alright, so I'll just hit F5 from the keyboard so that we just see the last execution of the keyboard, last execution of our program. So breakpoints are very powerful. Like right now I've just showed you the small program only. Right, but when you will be running your big Selenium scripts, actually you will get to know what exactly is the practical usage of putting these breakpoints and debugging your program. Alright, okay, and then out here, say like instead of writing I is equal to I plus 1, we can simply write I plus plus as well. This is one and the same thing, the incrementation part. Okay, this is your post incrementation. The value of I has been incremented by 1. Okay, like these are one and the same thing. Alright, now say suppose I'll just write I is equal to 10. Say I initialize the I variable to 10, and then I say that while I is greater than 0, I minus minus. I'm just say like printing the result, printing the numbers in the reverse order. Alright, okay, so now if I run my code again, okay, so breakpoint is there. I'll just hit F10 from the keyboard. The value of I is 10 initially, and then 10 is greater than 0, so it will go inside this while loop, will print the value of I, and then will decrement the value of I by 1, that is 9. You see that? 9 it is. And then again it will check the condition, 9 is greater than 0, again true, will go inside this while loop, print the value of I, and then will decrement the value of I by 1, that is equal to 8. Right? So it will keep on running till the time the condition is satisfied. I'll just continue with it, and then you see that it prints the numbers in the reverse order from 10 till 1. Alright, so this is your while loop. Now let us see the next loop, that is the for loop. But before going to the for loop, let us see the disadvantage of this while loop. The disadvantage of this while loop is that if you don't give this incrementation or the decrementation part over here, then what happens is you are stuck in the infinite loop. My loop is stuck infinitely. So suppose I don't have this incrementation or the decrementation statement in my while loop, and then now if I say run my code, you see that this is continuing, like this is running your program infinitely. It will keep on printing the value of the I infinitely till the time you forcefully stop the execution from the keyboard. Alright, so this is the disadvantage of the while loop. That is, if you don't give the incrementation or the decrementation statement in your while loop, then you are stuck in an infinite loop. Alright, so now let us move forward to the next loop, that is the for loop. So I'll add a new class for it. That is for loop it is. Right, so for loop will overcome the disadvantage of the while loop. I will just see that public static void main. I'll just initialize the main function over here. Okay, and we'll just comment the main function of the while loop. Alright, okay. So how do you declare the for loop? That is, we have for. Inside this you give the initialization, that is int I is equal to 0. Then we have the condition, that is I less than 10. And then we have the incrementation or the decrementation part. Right. So this is your syntax for declaring the for loop. Alright, that is, the first part is the initialization, then comes the condition, and the third part is the incrementation or the decrementation part. Alright, so now you see that I'm forced to give everything in one single line only. So there is no chance of getting stuck in an infinite loop. The disadvantage of the while loop. Right, so like we'll just see the execution. Say I print the value of I inside it, and I just write console.read key. And then now if I execute my code, you see that it prints the result from 0 to 9. Alright, so the basic motto of both of the while loop and the for loop is same, but the syntax is different in the for loop and the while loop. Right, the syntax is only different, but the result is same in both the loops. But then for loop is more famous than the while loop. Alright, now say suppose I want to sum the numbers from 1 to 100. Alright, so like say suppose I have a variable with me in sum is equal to say 0. Okay, fine, and then say I have for int I is equal to 0, I less than equal to 100, and then I plus plus. Alright, and then now say suppose I say sum is equal to sum plus I, and then I print the value of the sum in the end. Okay, fine, I print the value of the sum, and then now if I run it, you see that it says that the sum of the first 100 numbers, that is the sum of the first 100 numbers is equal to 5050. Alright, so now how this logic actually works, that is how is this summation of the numbers is going on. Let us see with the help of the breakpoint. I'll just put a breakpoint, I'll just debug the code. Okay, so let us understand with the debugging. So I put a breakpoint over here, and then now I'll just run it. Okay, I hit F10 from the keyboard, and then you see that the control comes on the first line, that is sum is equal to 0 initially. Then it goes to the for statement, for loop, that is for int I is equal to 0, I less than equal to 100, that is 0 is less than equal to 100, true it is, right? So it goes inside the for loop. It says that sum is equal to sum plus I, that is sum is equal to 0 plus 0 is equal to 0 it is, right? So it is a 0 only. The value of I is 0 and the value of sum is also equal to 0. Fine. Now it increments the value of I by 1, that is now I is equal to 1 and sum is equal to 0, right? So it checks the condition I is less than 100, that is 1 is less than 100. So it will go inside this for loop. It says that sum is equal to sum plus I, that is sum is equal to 0 plus 1, that will be equal to 1, right? So you see that now I is 1 and sum is also equal to 1. Alright, now it will again increment the value of I by 1, that is now I is equal to 2. The condition is again true. It says that now sum is equal to 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, right? So sum is equal to 3 this time, right? So in this way it is executing your for loop and is printing the sum of the first 100 numbers, right? So this for loop will keep on executing till the time your condition is satisfied, that is I is less than equal to 100 it is, right? It will keep on executing your for loop, and then in the end, and then when I will be equal to 100, it will print the value of the sum, that is 5050. Alright, so I'll just continue with my code, and then you see it prints the result, that is 5050. So this is a simple program of the for loop to print the sum of the first 100 numbers. Alright, now the practical example on the for loop, that is how can you use this for loop in Selenium, that is where all in Selenium will we be using this for loop. Like say suppose I have an Excel sheet over here with me, which has 4 columns: username, password, email and the zip code. Alright, I have this data with me. On each and every row you have some set of data for the 4 columns inside it. Alright, now while executing this stuff with Selenium, we will be reading the Excel file only with C# to write your data driven scripts in Selenium. So to write the data driven scripts, we will be actually using a for loop to iterate through the row number and the column number from the Excel file. Alright, so using for loop, we will be iterating through this Excel sheet only. So this is the major usage of the for loop with the Selenium as well in Selenium while learning it with C#. We'll get to know in the coming classes when we will be actually implementing the for loop while reading the data from the Excel file. Alright, so this is your for loop. Fine. Now coming over to the next topic, let's move forward to the next topic, that is what arrays are. What is the practical advantage of the arrays, how arrays are used, and what actually are the arrays, right? So I'll just add a new class, that is arrays. Okay, and then we'll add a main function to it, public static void main. And we'll comment the main function of the for loop. Okay, and we have this class arrays class with us. Now what is an array? Now say suppose I have a lot of data with me. Say taking the example of this Excel sheet only, say I have 4 columns with me, username, password, email and the zip code. I have these 4 columns with me. So let me just create the variables corresponding to each and every column. Say I have the string variable username is equal to, say, any name it is. Okay, and another variable password is equal to any password, and then what else we have, the email variable with us, that is, say, any email ID for that username, right? And another variable is zip code, any zip code. Okay, now sometimes you will have a lot of data with you. This is just a little bit of data that we have right now, right? This will be like, this is just a small amount of data only. But say suppose you have a lot of data with you, then you will be like, there will be a lot of confusion, because sometimes you've got 100 fields in your project, and then you need to fill those 100 fields with the value using the Selenium. So what exactly we do is, there we use the concept of arrays. There we use the concept of arrays. Now what is an array? Array is basically a memory location in which you can store multiple values. Over here. Like say suppose we have an array with us. Okay, we have an array with us. Like array will look something like this, in which you will be storing multiple values inside it, right? We will be having multiple values inside the array. Then each box inside this array will be storing some different value. It will have sections like this over here, and each section can store something, and each section has got an index associated with it. The index is starting from 0, 1, 2, 3 and the 4th index. Alright, okay. Now say suppose you can initialize a string array like this. Say suppose we want to initialize the string array. Then you say string array is equal to new string. Alright, and inside this, say suppose, and do you need to specify the size of the array. Alright, so this number, 5 number, it specifies the size of the array. That is, it says that this array can hold 5 values inside it. This array can hold 5 values inside it. Okay, that is, and then the indexing is starting from the 0th index. That is, you will have to write say like you'll have to write an array like this. Array at the 0th index. What is your value at the 0th index? That is, we have the value for the username, right? Then similarly, I have the value at the first index is equal to password it is. Then we have the array at the second index is equal to the Gmail ID, gmail.com, right? And the value at the fourth position, that is at the third index, is your zip code, any zip code it is. Okay, and then say suppose we have one more variable, one more column with us, that is the say suppose city variable it is, right? So I have any city value. I initialize one more variable, city is equal to say New Delhi. Alright, so it says that this string array is holding 5 values inside it, that is, these are all the 5 values. Alright, so later on we'll see how to, like, we'll read the values from the Excel file only. When we will be working with the Selenium script, we will be actually seeing how to read these values from the Excel file and put it inside the array. Alright. But there is one drawback of the array, that is, if the array is of the type string, then you have to give the maximum capacity which that string array can hold, right? But then say suppose if the array is of the type integer, if say suppose we have an integer variable, integer array with us is equal to new int, and then inside it you again specify the number of integer values that this integer array can hold inside it. Alright, then the drawback is string array cannot hold integer values inside it. Similarly, integer array cannot hold the string values inside it. And similarly, if you have an character array with you, if you have an character array, then character array also cannot hold the integer or the string values inside it. Alright, so arrays is for a particular data type. You cannot store the cross data types inside the arrays. You cannot store the cross data types. So then there is a solution for that as well. We'll tell you in some time. Alright, so one of the major drawback is the size of the array. Sometimes you don't know the amount of data which we will be actually reading from the Excel file. Say suppose we don't know how many columns we want to read from the Excel file. So out there, that the size of this array creates a problem. That is, since we know that in the initialization of the array we have to specify the size of the array as well. Alright, so this is one drawback with the array. Now some features of the array, say suppose that is, if you want to find the length of the array, right? If you want to find the length of the array using the code, then how do you print the length of the array? That is, for say suppose we have this string array with us and I want to print the length of this string array. That is, you say array dot length. Length is the function which will print the length of the array. So suppose if I execute it, we didn't write console.read key. I'll execute it again. So you see that it says that the length of this string array is 5, which it prints, that is equal to 5 it is. Right, now say suppose I want to print all the elements of this string array. Then for that we can simply write a for loop over here. That is, you say for int I is equal to 0, say suppose, okay, and then say I less than the total number of arrays you have, right? That is array dot length and I plus plus. Alright. Fine, say we have, like, we write a for loop. For it I is equal to 0, I less than the total length of the string array, that is the array, and then I plus plus, right? So that means the value of the I would go from 0 till the length of the array. Alright, now why am I initializing the value of I with 0? Because the first index is at the index 0 in the case of the arrays, as we have seen. Right, and then now say suppose I want to print the value, I want to print all the elements inside the array, that is I'll just say print them, console.writeLine with the value of the arrays. Right, and then if I execute it, you see that it prints all the values of the string array, all the elements. So when you run it for the first time, I will be 0, right? I will be 0 for the first time, and the I0, the value at the 0th index is equal to RAM. So it prints RAM. Then second time I will be incremented to 1. So the value of 1 array at the first index is holding this value. So it prints the next value, that is the value of the password field. Right, so it similarly prints all the elements of the string array. Similarly, say suppose we have an integer array with us as well, right? And then this integer array can also hold multiple values inside it. Say suppose it has the values as at the 0th index is equal to say 10, at the first index is equal to 20, then x2 is equal to 30, right, and then x3 is equal to 40. Okay, that is, this integer array is holding 4 values, right? And then if you want to print the values of the integer array as well, then we'll simply write a for loop. Say for int j is equal to 0, j less than the total number of the length of the array, that is x dot length it is, and we have j plus plus, and you simply print the value of this array, that is the value of the integer array, right? And then I'll just put a demarcation line so that we can just differentiate the result of the two arrays. Alright, so you see that it prints the value of the integer array as well. Right, now if say suppose you want to print the array in the reverse order, that is the last index should be printed first. Alright, then what I have to do is I have to start the value of the j with the length of the array. That is, you have int, say suppose int j is equal to x dot length minus 1. Okay, and while x is greater than equal to 0 it is, and then you have j minus minus. Alright, and then now if I run it, you see that it prints the value of the array in the reverse order, right? It prints it in the reverse order. Fine, so this is how you print the value of the arrays as well. So now let us see the two-dimensional array. Now in Selenium we will be actually using the two-dimensional array only. Now two-dimensional array, how it looks something like this, that is, you have columns and rows. You have rows and columns inside your two-dimensional array. Alright, so two-dimensional array, it looks something like this. It has got the rows and the columns inside it. So the rows and the columns will be there inside the two-dimensional array, and inside each and every cell we will have the data, right? And the row, and then this is also like the row number is starting from the 0th index, 0, 1, 2 and 3, and similarly the column is also starting from the 0th index, 1, 2 and 3 it is, right? So indexing starts from the 0 in the case of the rows and the columns in the two-dimensional array. Now to make a two-dimensional array, what you need to do is, we'll just discuss that. Say suppose I'll add a new class, two-dimensional array. Okay, and I'll just add a main function to it. Alright, and I'll comment this main function of this arrays class. Okay, so you have your two-dimensional array class which contains the main method. Right, now how do you declare the two-dimensional array? That is, say we have to declare the string array, then you have string, and then we need to specify the number of rows and the columns, right? So I say I just differentiate it with the comma, all right, and then say you have the x variable x array is equal to new string. Okay, and then out here you need to specify the number of rows and columns you want in your two-dimensional array. All right, okay, that is, we have, say I want the number of rows are 3, okay, and the number of columns are 4. Okay, so in a two-dimensional object, like in a two-dimensional array, the first parameter is it is denoting the number of rows, and 4 is equal to the number of columns. All right. Okay, so now I'll just initialize the values inside my two-dimensional array. That is, say suppose I say I'll just initialize the first row. The data inside the first row will go something like this. That is the array at the 0th row and the 0th column. The value at the 0th row and the 0th column is, say, A. Then similarly, we are simply right now I'm specifying the data for the first row. So the first row is at the 0th index, right? And then the column will increment every time. So now the value of the column is equal to 1, and say the value is B in the first column. Right. Similarly, the data at the 0th row and the second column is equal to, say, C. Okay, and similarly we have the data at the fourth column is equal to, say, D it is. Right. That is, I say I have 3 rows and 4 columns with me. So these are the values for the 4 columns, right? So how they will go inside your two-dimensional array, that is, this is your two-dimensional array, and then the value of the first cell, that is 0th row and 0th column, is holding the A value inside it. Similarly, the 0th row and the first column, this cell is having the B value, then C, and then this D value inside it. Alright, so this is how the data is filled inside the two-dimensional array. We'll tell you the practical usage of the arrays as well, why we use this in Selenium and where we use this in Selenium. Alright, so first we'll just put the values inside this array, inside the two-dimensional array. That is, we have 3 rows with us. Alright, now let us substitute the values for the second row. That would be at now the row index will change. Alright. And similarly, let us substitute the values for the third row, which will be at the second index. And you have your data for the third row. Alright. So this is your data, complete data for the two-dimensional array in the 3 rows and the 4 columns. Now, why do we use this two-dimensional array in Selenium? I have just showed you an Excel file over here, in Selenium, and then when we will be actually reading the data from this Excel file, we read it actually inside the two-dimensional arrays. Now, the C# code, what it will do is it will read this Excel file into a two-dimensional array. So that is how we work with it. We don't read the Excel file cell by cell. We don't do it like that. We put the whole data, this complete data, inside the two-dimensional array. Alright, okay, so we'll see the practical implementation of it as well as we proceed with the course. Okay, now how to print this two-dimensional array? We have substituted the values inside this array, but now how to print this array? That is, in order to print the values of this array, I need to write a for loop which can print each value from this two-dimensional array. Alright, so first of all, let us print how many total number of rows we have inside this two-dimensional array. Alright, that is, I'll say console.writeLine say rows are equal to how many rows you have. That is, for that we have the array, that is the array dot get the length. Okay, get the length of which thing? Like you have to get the length, you have to get the length of the rows, right? And then I've told you the first parameter is like it specifies the number of rows. So for that I say I want to get the length of the 0th index. So the first at the 0th index you are specifying the rows. Okay, so first dimensional size is for the rows. And then now if I run it, okay, it has given you an array. Oh, okay, this is your third column. All right, that is the fourth column is at the third index. So I need to just change the index. Sorry for that. I'll just run it again. Yes, so now you see that it says that the total number of rows are 3, which we have specified over here, and then we get the result as the row count of it is 3 equal, right? The number of rows are 3. Alright, so x dot get length will give you the number of rows in your two-dimensional array. Now similarly, let us extract the number of columns, how many columns we have. And then for that the index will change to 1. That is the second dimension is specifying the number of columns. Alright, so if I run it again, you see it says the total number of columns are 4 in your two-dimensional array, which is equal to 4. Alright, now we need to print each and every value inside this two-dimensional array. So for that we'll simply write a for loop, that is for int I is equal to 0, or we say a row number, right? We have for int row number is equal to 0, row number less than the total number of rows you have, that is x dot get length, alright, and row number plus plus. Alright, okay, so this is this for loop will be iterating over each and every row inside your two-dimensional array. Alright, now why I'm initializing the row number to 0? Because we know that the row number is starting from the data is actually starting from the first row. Alright, and then inside this for loop we have to write another for loop for iterating over the columns. Right, for iterating over the columns, we'll write another for loop for int column number is equal to 0. Then column number less than the total number of columns you have, that is at the first position. Okay, and then column number plus plus. Okay, and then we will print the values of the rows and the columns, that is x. Okay, it is rwnum and the column number as well. Alright, so now if I run it, you see that it prints the value of the entire two-dimensional array. Okay, the 3 rows and the 4 columns it prints. So what you have done is you have printed the complete two-dimensional array. We have iterated through the complete two-dimensional array. Now let's make the result in a more better way. That is, I'll just write over here, say, just print it over here. Okay, and we'll print one array, one row in one single line only. All right, and then put a blank line. Okay, so now you see that it prints the result of your two-dimensional array. Okay, so console.writeLine, it moves the cursor to the new line. Alright, so we have seen the practicality of the two-dimensional array as well. We have seen the single dimensional array and the two-dimensional array. The two arrays we have discussed. Alright, and then most of the time we will be actually using the two-dimensional array only while dealing with the test data. And then the only drawback of this array is that it cannot be determined in the beginning that what would be the length of the array. Right, the size of the array is a big issue over here. Now this is all about the two-dimensional array. That is, we have the string array, you can declare any type of array. Now one more thing which is left with the two-dimensional array is that in a string array, if I want to put the integer value, I cannot put that. Right, similarly if I have the integer arrays and if I want to put the string values, then I cannot do that as well. So for that we need to have an array in which we can put multiple types of data. Right, because in my test cases, in my test data, I can have a zip code as well, which might be a numeric. I can have the string values, I can have the boolean values as well. So I might have different kind of test data with me. So for that, we need to make something like an object array. We have another type of data, that is the object array. Alright, say I'll just add a new class for it. Okay, and I'll add a main function. Okay, now how do you declare the object array? That is, you have an object array with you. Say object array is equal to and then we specify the size of the array. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'll just have to put the brackets over here. Fine. So this is your object array. Now what is an object array? Now object is an inbuilt class in C#, which we'll talk about this class in detail as we move on with the course, but for now we'll just discuss the basics only, like what is an object. Okay, now when we move when we discuss with the later topics as we proceed with the course, we'll discuss it in more detail. But the advantage of this object array is that it can store multiple data types inside it. That is, inside this array, inside this object array, say I have this object array with me, and then say suppose at the 0th index, say I store a string value over here, say hello it is. Right, then similarly if I need to store the integer number, then I can store the integer number as well inside this array. Similarly, say I want to store the boolean value. Alright, then you can store the boolean value as well inside this object array. Similarly, you can store even the decimals as well. That is, say even the decimal also you can store it inside this object array. So object array can store any value inside it. You can store any type of data inside this object array. Alright, so this is all about the object array. That is, we have discussed single dimensional array, two-dimensional array and the object array. And then how it will be used in Selenium as well, that also we have discussed. And then while working with Selenium, we will be actually using the object array only. Alright, now let us move forward to the next topic, that is what functions are. Alright, so I'll add a new class, functions, and inside it I'll add a main class. I've made a main function. Right. Now functions, what is a function? Function is an independent small unit of execution. Now this main is a function over here, which is starting with the curly braces and closing with the curly braces. Okay, and inside this we will be writing the body of our function, the scope of the main function. Like we all know that all the code has to come inside this main function. This main is a function. Similarly, you can even make your own functions as well. Say like we can make our own function, say public static void say test. Okay, this is another function. Test is a function, another function. Alright, which contains the curly braces opening and the closing, and then inside this we will be writing the body of the function. Okay, and then what is static, what is void, what is public, we'll discuss everything. Alright, then this main is the name of the function, this test is the name of the function. If I write, like say suppose if I write this function inside this main function, then you cannot do that. You cannot write a function inside another function. We cannot do that, right? We'll have to write the function separately. Okay, that is, say suppose I have this test function with me. Okay, alright, and then say suppose if I write anything inside this main function, say I have in main, and similarly if I write another statement inside this test function, that is in the test function. Okay, and I just write console.read. Alright, and I'll just comment the main function of this object array. Fine. Alright, now when I run my code, okay, it says the okay, I have commented this main function of the two-dimensional. Alright, I need to comment this main function of the two-dimensional array as well. Since I told you, you cannot have more than one main function inside a single console application project, right? I'll run it again. So you see it prints in main, that is in the main function I have written only one statement, that is in main. Right, now when you execute your code, it simply prints in main only. It does not print in test function. It does not print that. That is, functions are not executed as they are, as they look like. They will be executed, but like as they look like, they are not executed in the similar fashion. Alright, and functions are inside the class body. The functions are declared inside the class body. Okay, that is, all the functions should be inside the class body. They should be parallel to each other. I told you, you cannot declare a function inside another function. We cannot do that. If I put this test function inside this main function, we cannot do that. Right? We cannot do that. You see that the errors would start coming up in your code. You cannot declare a function inside another function. They have to be parallel to each other. Alright, and then say if you want to print this statement as well in test function, then we'll have to call this function in the main function. That is, I say have to call this test function inside this main function in order to see the output of this test function as well. So I have called this function, and then now if I run it, you see that it prints the in test function statement as well. So main function is one in which the control comes by default when the program runs for the first time. Alright, so when you call this test function inside the main function, so now it prints this statement as well of the test function, that is in test function. Because when the control comes to the main function, it will first of all print this statement in main, and then it will come to the next statement and will call this test function in which we are printing one and again another statement, and then it comes out of the main function. Alright, so and then the order in which the program executes is the serial order. In the main function, first of all we are printing this line, and then we are calling the test function. And then when you see the execution, the result as well, you see that it is executed in the serial order. It first of all prints in main, and then it prints the statement of the test function, which is in test function. Alright, and then you can create as many functions as you want in a single class. Say you have another function with you, say public static void, say print it is. We have another function with us, print function. Okay, and inside this I print anything, hello. Okay, and we'll call this print function in the end inside the main function. Okay, and then if I run it again, you see it prints the result of the print function as well, that is hello, and that too in the end, since we are calling this print function in the end only. Alright, so this is a very useful thing. The functions are very useful. Functions is something which can execute itself again and again. Suppose you've got 100 test cases with you, and all of them requires you to log in inside an application. So instead of writing the whole code which will help you log you inside the application, you can write the code inside a single function only, and then simply can call that function again and again from all the 100 test cases. I'm just right now giving you an example only, and how we do it practically we'll see when we work with the Selenium. Alright, and then even we can pass the values inside the function as well. That is, say I'll just add a new class, say functions passed by value. Okay, then that is, I'll just passed in value inside the functions. Okay, and alright, we have this function with us, we have this class with us, and then say suppose inside this class I have a function with me, say public void, say sum all. Okay, and inside this, say I have 3 variables with me, int a, b and int c. Okay, I have a sum all function which contains 3 variables a, b and c, 3 integer variables. Okay, that is, and then what we need to do, we need to sum the 3 integer variables, right? So I say int sum is equal to a plus b plus c. Okay, so what you will do is, now you need to say like print the sum of the 3 numbers. So like say we have a main function as well, say public static void main. Alright, and I'll declare it as static over here, since a static function can access only the static functions and variables. We'll discuss this concept of the static as well. Alright, and then I'll just comment this main function of the functions class so that we don't get any error. Okay, now what I need to do is I want to print the sum of the 3 numbers. Alright, so inside my main function, say I call this sum all function, and then inside it you need to pass the 3 integer numbers, the 3 numbers whose sum you want to print, right? Okay, say I have 3 numbers with me, 4, 7 and 2. I want to print the sum of the 3 numbers. Alright, and then you even print the result as well. So I'll just console.writeLine, and I'll even write console.read key to read the output. Fine, so now if I run it, it says that the sum of these 3 numbers 4, 7 and 2 is equal to 30. Similarly, we can call this sum all function with another set of parameters, that is, I even call the sum all function with another set of parameters, say 38, 41 and 22 it is. And then now if I run it again, it is first of all going with this sum all function. So I'll say suppose I want to print the result of this sum all function. Okay, so it says it prints the result for the second set of parameters. Okay, so sum all function, any number of times you can execute with the different set of parameters. So function is like a factory in which you just supply something and the output comes with it to the logic we applied inside this function a plus b plus c. Alright, so functions can be called any number of times. There can be any function in a class. Alright, and then the functions have to be parallel to each other. And the number of arguments you specify in the function have to be same with the number of arguments you passed from the main function as well. Alright, these parameters, number of parameters should be equal to the number of parameters you passed inside this main function also. Alright, and then I cannot pass a string value now. Like over here inside this sum all function, this is accepting 3 integer variables. Then when you are trying to call the sum all function, you cannot pass a string value. You cannot pass a string value when you are calling it from the main function, because I am saying that this sum all function is accepting 3 integers. And then when you are calling it from the main function, you cannot call a string. It cannot call a string value. It will give you an error. Okay, that is, if you have to pass a string value, then you can simply declare another variable, another function for it. That is, say we have public static void another sum all function, which now accepts the string variable, right? Say we have string a and 2 integer variables. Alright, so now you see that now the error has gone. That is, now what will happen is when you are calling the sum all function from the main function, now this sum all function will be called, which accepts 1 string value and 2 integer values inside it. So now this time it will be calling this sum all function. It will be this sum all function which has 1 string and 2 integers. Alright, so this is just a small example which we have discussed right now. Alright, okay, this is the concept of the functions. Now if suppose if I declare a variable inside this sum all function, that is, say int x is equal to 200. Int x is equal to 200. Then this x variable, this is the local variable over here. Local variable means that the life of this x variable is only inside this sum all function only. Alright, similarly this sum is also a local variable. This sum is also a local variable. Alright, okay, now say suppose if I try to print this sum variable inside the main function, or if you try to print this sum variable inside another sum function, then you cannot do that, right? You start getting an error below this sum keyword. It is because you have declared the sum inside this sum all function. So as I told you, this sum is the local variable, which means that the life of this sum variable is only inside this sum all function only. It cannot be accessed inside another functions. You will get an error if you try to call this sum variable inside another function. Alright, say suppose if I try to declare a variable inside my main function, say string d is equal to anything, say hello it is. Okay, then this d variable will be accessed inside this main function only. Alright, so local variables can only be called inside the function in which you have declared. Alright, so these are your local variables. And then if you declare a variable inside a class, then these are known as the global variable. That is, you can simply call access this R variable inside any function. If you try to access this, you can access it inside any variable, right? Say if I give it any value over here, okay, I need to make it as static since we are trying to access this R variable inside the static main function, right? So you see that this is now the global variable. If you declare a variable inside the class, then that becomes a global variable, and that variable can be accessed inside any function. It can be accessed inside any function, right? Okay, and then the functions can also return back a variable or a value as well. That is, for example, I have this sum_all function, I have this another sum_all function with me, and I want to check that whether the result, like over here we are adding the three numbers and we are printing the result, and then I want to check that whether this result is greater than 100 or not. If it is greater than 100, then I want to print one line that is greater. Else, if it is less than 100, we'll print the result is lesser than 100. Alright, so over here you see that I am saying that the return type of this sum_all function is a void. Void is a return type. That is, void means nothing. It should return you nothing. Right, now function can accept any number of arguments, but a function can return only one value if a function want to return. For example, I want that the sum to be accessed inside the main function. Alright, I am calling this sum_all function inside my main function. Okay, and when I call this sum_all function, I want that when the function should be the function should return you the value as well. Alright, that is, the function should send me back the sum of the three numbers, as well as it should check whether the sum is greater than 100 or not. Alright, so in that case we will change the return type of this function to an integer. Okay, that is, I say this sum_all function will now return you an integer value. And then it is mandatory to write the return statement as well in the end. Okay, that is, you say you want to return the value of the sum variable. Okay, so if you don't write this return statement, then you will get an error. As you see that you are getting the error below this sum_all function. That is, whenever you are trying to return something inside this function, then you have to give the return statement as well. Alright, and then in the main function, we will simply call this sum_all function. We will check whether the result we are getting it as true or false, right? So now we'll get the result in an integer variable. Okay, fine, and then I say I will check. I put an if condition that if the result is greater than 100, then just print greater than 100. Alright, else you print lesser than 100. Okay, and then this need to return as well, so I just give the return statement. Alright, and I have this, fine. So when I run it, you see that the result is 86. The sum of the three numbers 23, 41 and 22 is 86, which is lesser than 100, and it prints you as well. Alright, so this is how a function can return you something. Alright, similarly we can even make another function, say we have another function with us, say public static void, say find sum. I want to say find the sum of the first 100 numbers, the first 50 numbers. Alright, you just specify the numbers over here inside it. Okay, that is, whatever number you give it inside this function, it will find the sum of those numbers from 1 till that number, and then you will have to return that as well. Alright, so it should return me back as well. So for that, I will change the return type of this to integer function. Alright, and then inside it, say suppose I have int sum is equal to 0, then I need to print the sum of the numbers. Say for int x is equal to 0, x less than the total number of numbers you have, that is n, and then x plus plus. Okay, and then I just print the values. Okay, I need to sum the numbers, that is equal to sum is equal to sum plus x. Okay, and then I will just return the value of the sum. Alright, and then we will simply call this function. Okay, I'll just comment this, and then I'll call this find sum function inside my main function. So suppose I want to find the sum of the first 50 numbers. Okay, and then I'll store the result in a variable, say int s. Okay, and then I just print, that is sum of 50 numbers is equal to the value of the s. Alright, and then if I run it, it says that the sum of the first 50 numbers is 1275. Right, so similarly you can just print the sum of the numbers as well. So it's like a factory, as we have seen that we send something inside the function and then you get the result, you get something out of it. Suppose say like this is what is all about the functions. Fine. Okay, now say suppose now what is the practical usage where these functions will be used in Selenium, how they'll be used in Selenium. For example, in Selenium what we will do is, say suppose we'll have a function something like to log in inside the application, right? Say that is the function, say public static void do login. You have to log in inside an application in which, and then you will be sending your username and password with which you have to log in inside the application, right? So this is your do login function. Okay, then inside this you will be writing your Selenium code to log in inside the application with the help of the C#, which will try to log you inside the application. And after that, and then say like if the login is successful, then you would have to return a true value, right? Then the result should be true. So for that I'll just change the return type of this function to an boolean value, to a boolean value. So if the login is successful, then it will return you true, else it will return you false. So this do login function will be capable of logging you, will be capable of logging any user inside an application. Alright, and then similarly we can make more functions to register a user, to log out from the application. Any number of functions you can make inside the class.